Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this first of IMAP's webinar series for 2024. We've got a fascinating topic for this webinar series, which, unlike 2023, where we ran Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we're now running Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday to make to enable us to attack each topic in a concentrated way, and hopefully in a way which makes it easy for you to participate in and to join. Today we're going to be, let me just share my screen here. We're going to be talking about AI and its role in advice and portfolio management and investment management. And we're fortunate to have been joined throughout this three-day series by Mike Taylor, the editor of Financial Newswire, as the moderator for all three sessions. Today, we're going to have Glenn Calder, CEO of Viridian Financial Group, and James Wartho, the CEO of Fintalkr, talk about AI in advice, and I'll leave it to Mike to introduce our presenters. Tomorrow we'll be looking at AI in its role in portfolio management, and we'll be joined by an AI software provider from WealthPilot, a portfolio manager from Coronella Capital, and from AMP Investments in how they're thinking about integrating AI into their portfolio management process. And then on Wednesday, we'll be looking at AI and its role in investment management, both within the investment management process itself, and also, perhaps just as importantly, AI as an investment management opportunity for portfolio managers and investment managers. So we've got a fascinating set of perspectives on AI. It's so important. Even a micro organization like IMAP has begun to use AI in the way we interact with our clients and participants. Before I hand over to Mike, let me just say a few words about our upcoming events. First and most importantly, Portfolio Management Conference, in which we'll have over 30 portfolio managers, investment managers, talking about the way in which they see the economic situation, the geopolitical situation in which we operate, intersecting with client demands for portfolios. Each of our conferences runs from 8 a.m. to 1:30, from breakfast through morning tea, 2 morning teas, in fact, and a lunch session. And we're following each of them with a specialist masterclass or conference. And after the Portfolio Management Conference in March, we'll be looking at direct indexing and the opportunities that it offers to advisors and to portfolio managers as a way of delivering highly customized exposure to listed securities. Then in July, Advice in Action will look at the way in which advice businesses are being transformed by technology, by regulation, and by a desire to become a profession. And the other point which I wanted to make before handing over to Mike is, don't forget that the Managed Account Awards are an important way of recognising leading providers of managed account services. We'll open the submissions in April, and the final awards will be in August this year. Of course, if you want to ask a question, there's a Q&A button, and we welcome your participation. So now, without further ado, it's my pleasure to hand over to Mike Taylor to introduce our panelists for today.
Well, thanks, Toby, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to be moderating this opening session of IMAP's three-part look at artificial intelligence and its impact on financial services. Basically, I, like everyone else, am fascinated to know where AI is headed and how it will impact our sector, not least my own job. I heartily endorse the title of the series, Danger, Will Robinson, Those of us old enough to remember the old television series Lost in Space will know that with the danger warned of by the robot, there was also adventures and, dare I say, opportunities. With me today, Glenn Calder from Viridian Financial Group and James Wartho from Fintalkr. Both men have engaged with AI, with James as CEO of Fifth Logic, actually bringing AI to market in Australia. He has held senior technology roles across London and Sydney, including at Barcap and at Macquarie. Glenn Calder is, of course, the joint chief executive and executive director of Viridian and brings more than 20 years' experience in wealth management. He was the founding CEO of Viridian. He came to wealth management out of an education background, and this, I believe, underpins his approach to financial services and the manner in which he leads the Viridian strategic approach. So let's get the ball rolling, and to do so, I'm going to ask James to set the scene in terms of AI and what it can bring to advice. And, we have a range of questions here, but I think we'll kick off with, James talking to AI and what it means in the context of advice. So over to you, James.
Thanks, Mike, and thanks, Toby. Great to be here today. Look, really interesting question, and one that we get asked on an almost daily basis by CEOs of advice firms. We're working daily with artificial intelligence and the financial advice process. Our view at the moment is that AI can do many great things for financial advice. I want to caveat that there's obviously a lot of discussion around will advisors be replaced by AI, and our view and my view is I can't see that anytime in the near or midterm future. We have a saying at Fifth Logic that the A in artificial intelligence actually means augmented intelligence, and that means that we can use AI to augment the work that financial advisors do and bring huge benefits to them in terms of making it faster, cheaper, and safer to operate as a financial advisor. And actually, what we hear from a lot of our advisors is that we make the job fun again in many aspects, because it takes away a lot of the administrative work that they don't really want to do. So I think my view is that AI can do many great things in financial advice, and looking forward to being part of that journey.
Okay, thanks very much for that. And look, I wonder, where do you think AI is actually heading?
In its current iteration, Mike, we're asking.
Yes.
I think,
yep.
Yeah, I think AI from the hyperscalers like Microsoft and Google, I think things like the large language models are going to be commoditized in terms of pricing. I think that feature is going to get cheaper to operate and almost become ubiquitous. The benefit and the value will be on the use cases that are built on top of this version of AI. And I think what that's going to do for the industry is make it incredibly more efficient. And I think financial advisors and financial advice groups that adopt AI are going to be seeing a level of efficiency that those who do not will not see. And so where that translates to in real terms is financial advisors that we see using AI, and our AI in particular, are seeing 50% or 100% more clients a week, and that goes straight on the top line of their advisory, so their businesses are becoming more efficient, more profitable, and at the same time more compliant. So it gets back to that faster, cheaper, safer mantra that I talked about earlier, Mike.
Okay, thanks, James. Now moving on to you, Glenn, and I'd like you to give us some of your perceptions as the CEO of an advice group, particularly in terms of what Viridian is doing and perhaps contemplating doing, given that we have so many AI tools coming to market. Some of them quite basic, but others actually quite sophisticated.
Yeah, I mean, look, personally, I just find this one of the most fascinating topics that we've ever faced as an industry. And I'm finding that there's people who have they sit in two camps really. There's the doomsday preppers who the whole world's going to come down, we're not going to have a job, it's going to replace most of the people in our industry. Or there's the people who sit, this is the biggest opportunity that we've had since sliced bread, for want of a better analogy, if you like. And I do liken it through, and I sit in the second camp, and I'm going to put that out there, that I think that there's been huge amounts of change in our industry throughout my 20 years in it, and I think that is going to continue to evolve and adapt through the next 20 years, and this will be a core central tenet of it, I think. And I liken it back to those early days of Uber, for example, and I was an early adopter for Uber, and I found it quite fantastic. But you deliberately sort of put in these little questions into the taxi drivers and say, oh, well, what's Uber all about? And their immediate answers were things like, oh, it's illegal, they're unlicensed, it's unregulated, it's unsafe. And yet it's evolved so quickly that becomes such an outdated mantra. So we probably just have to have a look at ourselves, I guess, would be the first step. Of course, we sit in a highly regulated industry, and for good reason as well. So that safety aspect has to be absolute paramount in its concern. But, I'd also contend that if people are putting personal information into public databases, they're probably in the wrong industry now. And probably it's worth sharing my one and only slide, Mike, actually, which brought it home for me, really, which is just sharing the waves of innovation and just what has actually occurred when these have washed over society. And so you look back, that first wave of innovation there, they're talking about sort of power, textiles, iron, for example, right through to the fifth wave, like digital networks and the internet, for example. And we can't honestly sit here now and deny that the internet fundamentally changed all of our lives. And every one of those waves has happened to a greater extent than the one before. And they've also, the second thing, they've happened to a quicker extent. You can go right back to things like Henry Ford and the Model T Ford. And there's actually three reasons why that was unbelievably successful as an innovation. It was accessible, it was affordable, and it was reliable. So, and that changed the way that we travel through right through to today. And then you have a look at things like the internet. The internet was exceptionally expensive when we first started using that, but now it's accessible, it's affordable, it's easy to use. Plane travel, exactly the same thing. And then everyone's traveling on planes. Now, to me, AI is the most accessible thing that we've got. You've literally just got to type in as little as four letters into your browser, BARD, BARD, and you've got Google's version of its AI. So it's very, very accessible. Its reliability, you could question that, but day by day, I think it's getting more and more reliable, and you can't get any more affordable than zero. So I think it's quite an astounding sort of impact that it's going to have. And I agree with what James said. I actually think this is going to supercharge advice, because the people who become more effective and more efficient will then see more clients. They will commoditize things like our SOA, for example, and some of the research base. It won't require days, weeks, or months to produce that. That will happen in minutes. And what it'll do is maximize this face-to-face time, which I think personally is going to be, an astounding impact on our industry, and one that we should embrace. And so Viridian specifically, we are rolling out over the next couple of weeks, how are we going to face into this? How are we going to increase our client-facing time, which has to be a good thing? So personally, I think I've laid my cards on the table pretty clearly there. I'm a massive advocate of this. And as an industry, we need to get ahead of it. We need to invest in it. We need to promote our people into it. And we need to give them the tools from which to shine. And that'll set us up for the next generation.
Well, thanks, mate. Basically, I know James has got a bit of a demo video, I think, racked up. I hope I'm still right about that, James. Do you want to go ahead with that? Yep.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Just give me a moment here, guys. I'll just share my screen. Okay, hopefully everyone can see this. A little bit about Fintalkr. We're an Australian-based startup consultancy. We've been around since 2017. We have an AI product, which is all about AI and financial advice, capturing conversations, creating file notes and other compliance deliverables and making advice cheaper, faster, and safer, as we talked about before. We also have a consulting division where we're bringing AI and technology transformation into the financial world, and you can see some of our clients down there. Okay, so a little bit of AI background. I was asked to provide a little bit of background. So there's obviously been enormous attention since the release of ChatGPT. Almost, you could say, bigger than .com. Not quite sure I'm ready to make that call yet. I was around for that as well, but and there was a lot of attention around that in the day. But actually, AI and machine learning has been around since the 1950s. And Alan Turing, who cracked the Enigma codes in the Second World War, he was the guy who actually coined the phrase machine learning and actually conceived this as a discipline. So the question is, what has changed, and why now are things suddenly hyping up and ramping up? Well, a couple of big factors here have changed. Compute power has just grown enormously. So 10,000 times the size that it was 20 years ago for the same dollar, relative dollar. And also you can cluster computers into clouds now, and so you can combine compute power. Also, budgets have got huge. I mean, OpenAI to develop ChatGPT raised $11.3 billion US. I mean, that's a huge amount of VC money by anyone's means for a hugely ambitious project to develop a chat bot that could basically service any request from any human. That's a huge undertaking and a huge budget. Last week, I don't know whether any of you guys saw, the budgets are getting bigger. Last week, Sam Altman was in a press release talking about new chips and talking about a $7 trillion US budget. I mean, it's almost unfathomable. So what's happened and what's changed in the last few years? Computers have got way more powerful, and suddenly the industry has started throwing a lot more money at artificial intelligence. So what is ChatGPT from OpenAI? Well, it's a large language model created in Silicon Valley, and you can think of it as an AI machine for chat conversations, gaining insights, and automating tasks. So you can ask it almost any question. Write me an email, summarize this news article, write a song about this IMAP conference, and it would have an attempt at it. And what it will do is it will output in text form, or now voice form, an email, a summary, or a song. So it's very good at answering general questions and anything you want to throw at it. And it's not always right, but it gives a good first pass at many of these things. So how are these large language models created? So you take a little bit of training data, and you can see 3 sets of training data down here. The cat sat on the mat, the cat laid on the mat, and the cat sat on the mat. You train on those 3 statements, and then you ask the large language model the question. Complete this sentence, the cat. The large language model looks at the training data, and it says, well, it could be one of 2 answers, but I'm 66% sure it's the cat sat on the mat. And so this is how a large language model works. It looks at all of the training data and gives the best answer based on what it sees on the training data. Now, it may be right and it may be wrong. You're relying on the accuracy of the training data. The training data said the Earth is flat, and you asked it, is the Earth flat or round? The large language model would tell you the Earth is flat. So your training data needs to be very good. But this process works if you train on good data and large enough data sets. Now, the same process is true for images, transactions, voice conversations, and anything else you want to train an AI model on. You feed it large sets of training data, you tell it what the training data means, and then you ask it a question and ask it to categorize an image or a transaction or a piece of speech. So that's what a large language model is. So how was ChatGPT created? And basically they trained on a massive scale. So they took most of the internet and they added thousands and thousands of books and documents. And instead of just those 3 sentences I talked about before, they trained on this vast array of information. Interestingly, some of it copyrighted and some of it not. So there's all sorts of legal cases firing up about ChatGPT and OpenAI using copyrighted information in books and on the internet. So they took all of this information and they added a small budget of $17 billion to train this machine. Then you get to a large language model where you can ask almost any question, and you will get out an answer that looks similar to what a human would answer, or to be more specific, similar to what humans have written before in this information on the left. So similar to that. And actually, it's pretty good. You get some pretty good answers out of it. So that's how ChatGPT was created. The question is how fast are these things going? And Glenn talked about the AI revolution in the context of other revolutions that we've had. Here's a picture of how quickly these AI models are speeding up and getting bigger and more complex. So you can see back in June 18, they were training using 0.11 per billion parameters. So a parameter is like an internal setting or an internal switch in these models. 2 years later, they were using 175 billion. Now, you guys are all financial, so you'll know the multiple that is. It's a huge step up in capability. For ChatGPT 3, a year and a bit later, 540 billion. And ChatGPT 4, which just came out, 1.76 trillion parameters. So these models are scaling and developing at an incredibly advanced, fast rate and exponentially. So, and ChatGPT, just out of your interest, was this one here, GPT-3. That's when ChatGPT hit the market, all the news went crazy, and everyone started talking about ChatGPT. Now with GPT-4, it's a much more capable machine. Now, so what does all this extra capability get you? Well, you can ask bigger questions, more complex questions. You get better answers and more consistent answers. So these ramp up in size, get you a whole better capability. Who are the other big players in this space? Well, Glenn mentioned Google. Google have been working in AI for many years, and actually many of the fundamental pieces of technology are Google created, even underlying OpenAI. They've recently launched a new model called Gemini, was supposedly an incredibly capable model. We've played a little with it, and I've spoken to some other AI people who are using it a lot, and they're saying that it outperforms ChatGPT on many fronts. Facebook Llama, Microsoft have backed for OpenAI. I think they funded $10 billion US to OpenAI. And the other big tech name that you may be wondering is Apple. And where is Apple? And I don't know the answer to that. They seem to not be doing anything much in this space apart from Siri. But it gives you an idea of how quickly this industry is developing and the sort of money that's going into it. So what can you do with this technology? Well, you take these large language models, which I must add, you can train and tune around the outside for your own use case. You don't have to spend $10 million. You can spend a little bit of money and train it for your own use case. You can train your own models. You take your organizational data. You definitely need conventional programming and IT architecture. The number of people I meet who say we're going to do it all with AI, you need proper logic and proper IT architecture to do this as well, not just AI. And in some cases, public data. You take that, you feed it all in, and you can build AI-powered applications and platforms that are amazing. But bear in mind, you still need security, scalability, usability, flexibility, reliability, compliability, recovery, all the things that you need with any other IT system. Guess what? You need it with an IT-powered application as well. Plus, you need some new things that are specific to AI. You need guardrails. Make sure that your AI doesn't run off and do anything too crazy. Explainability. You need to prove that you're using data that you have access to. So all of these things, beware just pushing ChatGPT or any other AI tool unsupervised and unarchitected into your organization. It needs to be turned into a proper application. When you do that, I can tell you it's now possible to build software that 3 to 5 years ago you could only dream about. You can do administration, analyze data, help you be compliant, help with decision making, and much more. And as I said earlier, make it cheaper, faster, and safer to be a financial advisor, and maybe and hopefully make it fun again. So there are a few slides. I've got a really quick demo for you guys now. So hopefully you'll be able to hear the sound. This is the Fintalkr application. You can see all of your client meetings on this screen, the call list screen, the date they happened, how long they took, and what type of meeting they are. And you can adjust those things. I'll show you recording a new meeting now. You can select the client, one or more. You can select the meeting type, the advisor. You can have an in-person meeting using the PC microphone, or you can enter the Teams link, and a Fintalkr scribe will enter your Teams meeting. In this case, we'll do a PC microphone. You can, if you choose to, select the topics that you want to cover in the meeting, and you can reorder that agenda. You click here to start. Welcome to your financial advice meeting. This meeting will be recorded for training and compliance purposes. The advice given is general advice and doesn't pertain to your personal circumstances. You should act on this advice within 2 months. You then continue on with your financial advice meeting. You may talk about all manner of topics as varied as financial advice meetings should be. For instance, the client may say, I'd like to reduce my income tax and I'd like you to get me into a lower capital gains tax position. At the end of the meeting, you stop the recording. It tells you which topics you covered and which ones you didn't cover as a prompt in case you forgot to cover anything. When you go back to the call list, you'll see a number of calls, including your new call. Now that was a short call, so I'll show you a slightly longer one with a client, Fred Flintstone here. You can see that you get a full transcript of the meeting, and you can play that transcript from any point in the meeting, or you can play the whole audio for the meeting. You can also search if you wanted to search for superannuation or some other key term that you used. You can find those sections of the meeting. Over here, the system has automatically created your file notes. You get quite an extensive summary, and you get many sub-summaries in particular topics: personal information, fees, employment, property ownership, social security, financial goals, and you can see you get quite a lot of detail in here. This system is being used in production for meetings, anything ranging from 20 minutes up to 3 hours, some of the meetings. Sometimes we get 7 or 8 or 9 pages of file notes out that are very detailed and very good from a compliance perspective, but also to pass over to your paraplanner or assistants. At the end, you get a very good set of actions for the advisor and for the client. Now you can also edit this file note at any point and add new comments or whatever you like. You can download this file note to PDF. And you can see you get a good PDF version here. It can also be integrated to any of your CRM systems. Now, a couple of other things I'll show you is the sentiment graph. You can see the sentiment here. This is to track how well the conversation how well it went or did not go well. So here, if you click on one of the lower points on sentiment, you can see the client here is talking about it's really hard, things are difficult for them. And then some of the higher points talk about growth and growing and being happy. So that's a good second take on how did the meeting go and what parts of the meeting were strong or not so strong. In here, you manage your clients. So we set those up with a client ID that matches Xplan or whatever other CRM system you're using. And you can also upload historical meetings and documents here. So if you've got audio files or Teams files that were recorded in video or audio and are on your phone or PC, you can upload those and automatically generate your file notes. So our advisors in production, and we have many of them using this platform now, are saving half a day to a day a week. They're getting much more detailed file notes, and we're getting some very good feedback. So that's a very, very quick tour of the Fintalkr application. Thank you. Okay, thanks.
Well,
So, yeah, thanks, Mike. I'll just hand it over back to you.
thanks very much, James. And I'll just let you know that I turned off my audio because we've got the mother and father of a thunderstorm going on here, and not. But anyway, hopefully you're not hearing too much of it. So, looking at both of you guys, James and Glenn, I'm just wondering, overall, where do you think we're up to in terms of the Australian financial services industry and financial planning in particular, in terms of AI adoption? I mean, I know Fintalkr has its clients. There are other competitors out there who have their clients, but where overall do you feel we're up to on a scale of, 1 to 10? Where are we on the journey?
Maybe if I could I'll jump in there. Look, I think we're low on that scale, and I think it's because people are cautious and because of the industry that we've come through, Royal Commission, et cetera, and also we hold data security in its highest regard. Like we went through the ISO 27001 accreditation a number of years ago, which makes us have heightened awareness and responsibility to our clients' data. When you think about some of the things that have happened recently with Medibank or Optus, for example, and let's call it out too. I mean, they had data on clients, but nothing to the extent of the conversations, that we could tell people how much BHP shares they've got, whether they're, hopes and dreams, aspirations of their kids, for example. So the fiduciary duty we have is just, so much higher than most other industries. So, understandably, we're probably only at the start of our journey. We've been using it in compliance for a number of years now, and it's giving a lot of data and insights to it. But in terms of the advice process, it feels like we're just at the start of our journey, and that'll be the next sort of evolutionary leap that will increase the number of clients per advisor, for example. It will help increase the number of client-facing people in our industry as well. So it's worth the investment, it's worth the time, but I would still say that we're quite early in the journey.
Yeah, Mike, I would echo those comments. I think out of 10, I would put us somewhere between a 0 and a 1. The use cases themselves, the opportunities to use AI in wealth management and financial advice, I still think they're being conceived. Our application, Fintalkr, performs a set of functions within the advice process. But the plans that we have for that platform are amazing for the year or two ahead. And I still think we'll just be scratching the surface. Most CEOs I talk to are at the beginning of their journey. They're mostly thinking about what AI is, working that out, thinking about what implication it's going to have on their industry. And they may be running some trials internally. They may have 1 or 2 people running some trials. But in terms of packaging some of the AI capabilities up into an enterprise-grade application that Glenn is talking about, that is safe, secure, encrypted, has the right certifications, make sure all the data is domiciled in Australia. Most companies are right at the very, very beginning and concept view of that. And I would say also that is another big factor for Australian companies. We have very strict data privacy laws in Australia, and they say that there's an onus on companies to protect the personal information of their customers. And whilst it is possible to do some data processing offshore, you must do that processing in offshore jurisdictions that have at least the level of data protection laws that we have or higher. Now, a lot of AI development and services are in the US, and the US does not have very high personal data protection laws. And so I speak to a number of seniors, probably mostly in smaller advisories, sometimes bigger ones, who are using US-based AI companies, and they're pushing their PI data offshore. And when I say to them, "Gee, you know have you read the privacy?" and they say, "Well, look, James, it's unlikely I'm going to get audited on where my PI data is going and where it's going to the US." My point to them is that's not the problem. The problem is if you are using an offshore processing in the US and there is a cyber breach in the US, you're suddenly going to have to explain to your shareholders and to the regulator and to your customers why your PI data is impacted, and that could be corporation ending for you. So it's important that the data is kept onshore, that it is treated in a secure manner, and so I think, as Glenn said, we're in a highly regulated industry, and I think that the seniors in that industry are following due process and acting with caution with this data in the most part.
Look, we've got quite a number of questions coming from the audience, actually, so we'll move to that in due course. But I guess to some degree, you've totally explained the sovereign data issue, which is, keep it onshore at this point if you can. In terms of clients benefiting, I mean, I can see the benefits for advisors. It's self-evident, particularly when developing statements of advice, etc. For the client, I guess it's not going to reduce the cost, really, is it? I mean, the cost of providing advice is not cheap, and there's and that's a factor in some of the things the government's been doing. But I wonder, I wonder from your point of view, Glenn, where the client's going to benefit. They obviously there's more face time with the advisor, but where does the client benefit?
Yeah, I disagree with your statement that advice couldn't get cheaper. To be honest, I think it's going to go one of a couple of ways. You will get levelers of advice, the equivalent of going to a GP, for example, and then referrals into specialists. And we've made a lot of investment, whether we've got sort of chief investment officer, for example, aged care specialist, investment, a lot of that sort of capability. So I think that ability to triage is going to increase specifically through AI. And when you have a look at all of the people who touch a client file now, everything from potentially an advisor and maybe an associate into a CSM, into a paraplanner, into a compliance officer, for example. I mean, you could have 4, 5, 6 people. Now, some of those roles may repoint themselves into being client-facing as opposed to, more data analytics or protection, if you like. I would think that's got to manifest itself in either higher profitability or the laws of supply and demand will reduce some of the cost of that advice back to probably where it should be. I think it'll reinforce some of our fiduciary duty that we have to the millions of people who do not get advice and the millions of people who used to get advice but don't anymore because of where it's gone and it's got too expensive. So I could see a day where you can have an advisor who may only look after 30, 40 clients, but they're the absolute specialist. I can see an advisor who might look after 200 to 300 clients and they're a generalist and they play in their zone and they're very efficient and very effective at what they do. And I think that's going to be a fantastic day. So I can see, yeah, absolutely that some advice comes down, but equally some of that specialist advice is absolutely valued too. And, I think people are crying out for the need to see people. And I had a look, I've got teenage daughters and I went through the ringer recently with Taylor Swift, who she's just done the tour around Australia, and my daughter said, you have to get tickets to Taylor Swift, otherwise do not come home tonight. Now, I spent an hour and a half with that little wheel going around and around and around on my computer and did not get the tickets. She sold 2.5 million tickets, and then a couple of weeks later, that gets eclipsed by Coldplay selling something like 7 million tickets. Now, it made me reflect on it that I could sit at home listening to Taylor Swift on my Sonos speakers that's digitally streamed, that's absolutely perfect. And yet here we are trying to sit 100 rows back to try and see people in the flesh and see the live example. And the whole city just came alive. I think this will do a version of that for financial advice. It'll increase the ability for client-facing time. It'll increase the accessibility. And that's why I just think it is a worthy goal for us to invest in and to help train and encourage our people through it.
James, you want to
Yes,
come in
sure.
on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I think I'd echo some of Glenn's comments. I mean, in the last 5 years, the cost of financial advice has risen by 40%. The due to a lot of the compliance and record keeping requirements on advisors, the number of Australians getting financial advice has dropped from 14% to 10%. I mean, 10% of Australians in an aging population. I mean, that's a problem. That's a crisis. So the question is how can AI address that, and can it make it cheaper? Well, I can tell you on Fintalkr, advisors who are using Fintalkr are saving half a day or a day to a week, 4 to 8 hours of time. That's, if that's $100 or $200 an hour, you times that by 4 or 8 hours, and you start to end up with some big productivity gains. That can translate through to reduce costs and seeing more clients. We have an advisor. He's quite a special case. We have an advisor on the system that has 300 clients and quite a few admin people around him, but he uses Fintalkr to quickly go through all of their reviews all week. He just goes from meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting. On Friday, he pulls up, looks at all of his file notes on Fintalkr and says, okay, I'll just do a quick check over all of them, hand them off to the paraplanners. So using this type of technology, planners and advisors can see many more people and lower the cost of advice. And ultimately, that is going to allow more Australians to see financial advisors in this country, which is what we need and what I think the government's angling at through QAR.
Yeah, I'm just delving into some of the online questions that be asked by our audience, and Margaret Most has actually asked, have you found clients are comfortable having their meeting recorded, and how do you store this information within your IT architecture to protect personal information? And I know we've traversed that a little. Do you have a private cloud solution, or are you recording files stored on Xplan, etc.? So let's look at Glenn's view on that, because Viridian's obviously moving down the path at a steady rate. What's your view on that?
I think you touched on that data security. If we can lead with that this is going to increase our ability to help triage their circumstance. And our data security is absolutely paramount, and how that works. I would hope that lays a foundation of confidence for a client, because like James alluded to, if you don't and can't answer those questions, the data hacking that is happening on a daily basis it's so destructive. So I mean that's got to be your first port of call. But I'd be disappointed if we couldn't evolve as an industry and use it to enhance client outcomes, to enhance their safety, and to enhance the ability for us to provide better and better solutions. And that's got to be the core and central driver. Like for us at Viridian, it's got zero to do with cost reduction, and really the bottom line is that may be an outcome, but it's not the core driver. It's about client outcomes, more effective outcomes. How can we deliver advice to more Australians more efficiently, more safely, more effectively? And that only comes with that investment in that capability. So I would hope that we could educate clients to be comfortable with that, but I can understand the uncertainty of just like I saw another question there about how will clients react to the technology. It's our job to bring it to them in an accessible way. And I have a look at some of our 80 and 90-year-old clients that are coming in now with their iPhones and they're texting us, and they would never have done that before, or said, "Oh, I'm not used to this, or I'm not savvy." But it's our job to bring it to them in a safe, in a compliant, and accessible way.
So another question here from our audience is, I can see headcount savings with such a system. The question is, will the system cost so much that the net effect is the same? I can see headcount savings as well, but I just wonder what that's going to look like. I'll leave it to either one of you to answer that. Perhaps James, you'd like to have a go at that.
Yeah, sure. No, look, the business case has a very, very strong business case behind it. When you see saving half a day to a day a week for every advisor on your books, and making your para advisors more efficient as well, you're suddenly getting into the realm of saving, many thousands of dollars per month per headcount, and replacing that with a fairly what I would call small subscription fee for the platform. So the business case is very strong. It stands up and stands on its own very clearly when you look at that, and we're happy to work with you offline on showing you the business case for your organisation. I just wanted to touch on a couple of other things that were in the previous question, and that is around client recording. Occasionally, clients say that they're uncomfortable with recording, but it's very occasional. Most are comfortable if it's explained in the right way. If you say to them, this is a scribe that is going to help me take notes, most people are comfortable with that. And in fact, we only have one or two that clients across all of our advisors who say that they're not comfortable with recording. And for those meetings, you just don't record them. We also have a feature coming shortly where you can pause the recording if the client wants to talk about something else. Just getting onto the data privacy and encryption, you need to architect these platforms to protect from cyber attack from the very first moment you start designing them. Our platform is designed so that every piece of PI data is encrypted at a user level. Even if you get access to our database, no one can read it. Our own administrators, and Elon Musk pushes this as a design principle. He says that the summit of cyber protection and design is to make it so that your own people can't see the data, and that's how we've architected Fintalkr. So you can't see the data. Not even our own people can see the data. And yes, we run in a private cloud. We can also run in a client's private cloud. So our system is able to be picked up and migrated into a client's Azure cloud or even onto their private servers if they want to keep their data in-house. So sorry, Mike, I answered a couple of the previous questions as well.
No, I'm all for the conversation. I think it's good. Really interesting one here, especially because of some of the discussion around the AMP results last week, actually. Is there an opportunity for customers to receive regulated and compliant advice without human contact in the near future? Would the scalability and accessibility of that advice to that advice model be the most effective and for most Australians? Perhaps in the longer term, this will be an inevitability. I think that's interesting for the one reason that I know there are a number of companies that have looked at AI as a means of, getting their advice offering back into profitability rather than being, red ink on their balance sheet. So interesting question. And I guess, Glenn, perhaps you have a view there?
Look, potentially, but I can't see it in the near term unless it's very, very limited query. And I did see a forum where the top 3 uses of AI for a lot of people at the moment are around things like response to email, booking travel plans, and asking financial queries. What is the superannuation limits for the next year? Now, if it is limited to that advice, I can see it. But, we've got a use case here that doctors and Dr. Google has been around for the last 10 or 15, 20 years now. So, and yet we haven't got doctors going out of business. We haven't got people not going to doctors, but I'm sure people are Googling, what are my symptoms? Gee, I better go and see a doctor. Equally, you go and see a financial advisor, and if they're literally just giving you one little bit of superannuation advice on the limits there, they're probably not doing their job. They're not asking about your circumstances, your hopes, your goals, your aspirations, about your kids. So, and I just can't see AI doing that anytime soon. That's where I would contend that I can see AI being the super tool behind empowering advisors. And back to your previous question, I don't see any reduction in headcount, but I do see a change in headcount to being more client-facing. And we've got another case in point here that the car industry and the car manufacturing industry in the 1980s was absolutely huge, hundreds of thousands of employees. And I remember at the time there was a Senator John Button. He introduced the Button car plan that was going to retool all of our car manufacturing industry to be robotic and to be cutting edge. You fast forward another 10 or 15 years, not one car manufacturing job in Australia, and yet we've got record low unemployment. So all of those jobs all retooled into something else. And the same thing is going to happen here. We won't lose any people. In fact, we need more people in our industry. But one of 3 things has to happen. Like people either retrain themselves, use their skills to help train the AI, for example. They'll either retask themselves, and if they refuse to do any of those two things, there's a chance of redundancy. You don't want to be in that camp, like with change happening to you. You want to have change happening by you, and that's where the opportunity is now, I think.
Okay, I think we've actually worked our way through. Oh no, there's a new one here. Consumers and clients want to talk to a professional. The benefit of AI is everything else around the advice process, and I think you just went to that, Glenn. I think you actually went to that, which is that this is all about generating more face time and less time on the bureaucracy of advice.
100%. Yeah, frame that question from Ben. That hits it on the head, doesn't it? They want to talk to a professional, just like we're saying about doctors. Not only do you Google your symptoms, you go to a general GP, and they'll refer you to a specialist. And it's only then you feel like you've got all your advice. This is what's going to happen to financial advice. I think it's a brilliant time to be involved in it.
Yeah, I would agree. I think we actually need more financial advisors in Australia, not less. And I think AI can make their jobs easier and take a lot of the drudgery and admin out of it and allow them to spend more face-to-face time. And I'm telling you, the advisors, the range of advisors we've got, some very professional at the wealth end and the investment end, some working with pensioners. They are advising on all sorts of levels to these individuals and helping them in all manner of ways that can never be replaced by a machine. So let's get a machine to do all the boring work and let the advisors get on with their job. That's my thinking.
Okay, and possibly the last question, I think, from Ian Aspinall. For regulatory purposes, (ASIC), could you see an AI instance having to become an authorised representative of an AFSL if it was to deliver information and end investors if it was client-facing? Which is an interesting philosophical question as well. So I don't know which one of you want to take that on, but I'm going to get you to take it on, Glenn. What do you think?
Right. I mean, can you see Siri being charged by ASIC with unconscionable conduct and serving 3 years in jail or something like that? That's a good question. It really is. I can't see that. I really can't. I can see people behind the scenes who are responsible for that advice. But no.
That's right. But the people who own and train the AI model, they'd be the people that would need to hold that license. But also, I don't think we're getting to a point. I said before, in our firm, AI stands for augmentation and not artificial. And I think it's the same as true for giving advice. I think the machine can help generate it and take away the boring bits, but you always want a human to be overseeing that and checking it before it goes to the client. It's a bit like Tesla has spent billions of dollars creating a self-driving car, but they want a human in the car with their hands on the steering wheel. And the same is true for advice. You can spend a lot of money getting tools to help generate the advice, but at the end of the day, you want a human advisor with their hands on the wheel, sense checking it and making sure it's reasonable. And they'll be the ones that hold the license, as always.
Okay, I think that's the last question. So I'm going to throw back to Toby now. But obviously, as he said at the beginning, there's CPD points attaching to this, and I think this webinar will be accessible after the event. So back to you, Toby.
Yep. Thanks very much, Mike. And you're absolutely right. I found today's session fascinating, not just from the point of view of two participants who've clearly thought very long and very hard about the implications of AI, but are actually beginning to make use of it or enabling the use of AI in advice. Tomorrow and on Wednesday, we're going to look at 2 more dimensions around retail financial services. That's to say, portfolio management, the management of portfolios for retail and wholesale clients. And then on Wednesday, we're going to be looking at the more, if you like, institutional side of investment management with Monica Techer from InSync and a moment of forgetfulness from BetaShares as we look at AI in its in its applications in investment management. So thank you for joining us. I hope that in tomorrow and Wednesday, we have an opportunity to showcase for you real life applications of technology in retail financial services. And at the end of this 3 days of sessions, you come away with a clearer understanding of what AI might do for your organization, for your business, for your practice. So thanks very much, Mike, for hosting it, and we'll see you back tomorrow. To Glenn, now, of course, I should mention today is Glenn Calder's birthday. So perhaps the junior Miss Calder has forgiven him sufficiently for the lack of Tay-Tay tickets.
Yes.
To recognise that Dad should have a birthday present after all. And James, thank you very much for your time today in talking about Fintalkr and the way in which it assists advisors. So we'll see you tomorrow. Mike, we'll see you in person tomorrow, and look forward to those of you who've attended to joining us again. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.